So it is October, friends. I tell you, this is one of my favorite times of the year. It is a month that is absolutely filled with holidays and holy days. In the coming days and weeks, the world will be observing Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement. And then, before we know it, it will be Columbus Day, or as many of us prefer to observe it, Indigenous Peoples Day. October 24th is the Hindu festival of Diwali. And then it's on to Halloween and Samhain and All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. Of all the observances in October, I have one that is kind of my personal favorite. Now, it is one of those lesser-known holidays that is not promoted by Hallmark with special cards or at local florists or jewelry stores. It is an observance that only seems to appear on those special liberal calendars, you know, the ones you get in the mail from Amnesty International and the Southern Poverty Law Center. October 11th is National Coming Out Day. It marks the anniversary of the 1987 March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights, a historic event that attracted well over 500,000 people from all across the country to our nation's capital. At the time, that march was one of the largest civil rights demonstrations in American history. It was even larger than the famous March on Washington led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., from which it took its name. Over 30 years have come and gone now since some of my friends and I got in a rented van and headed from Ohio to the District of Columbia to be a part of that incredible event. And looking back on it, it is amazing to think how much has changed since 1987. At that time, in the place where I lived, and in most parts of our country, it was a revolutionary act to be openly lesbian or gay or bi or trans. This was a time when HIV and AIDS was devastating the gay community. The U.S. Supreme Court had just ruled that state laws criminalizing gay sex were constitutional. Jerry Falwell and his moral majority were at the height of their influence and power. In 1987, the few of us who dared to be out of the closet and open about our sexuality risked our careers, our families, and even our own personal safety pretty much every day. In that era, it was almost impossible to imagine a time when same-sex couples could legally get married anywhere, much less here in Kentucky. The idea of gay and trans characters on mainstream TV sitcoms and supportive groups in local high schools, those were unrealistic dreams. That's never going to happen. My, how things have changed. The Reverend Bill Schultz, who is a former president of our UU Association, often likes to preach that if we ever lose faith in the inherent goodness of humanity, and in people's ability to overcome their differences, if we ever begin to disbelieve that that great arc of the universe does bend towards justice, all we have to do is look at the LGBTQ movement and the incredible transformation in attitudes and laws and even some churches that has happened in just a few decades. Celebrating this progress and our role in it as liberal religious people is something that I think we do not do enough of. We should be proud that Unitarian Universalists have been siding with love and supporting people of all sexual orientations and gender identities for well over half a century now. When we think about these changes and how they came about, when we look out at our world today and all the divisions and the challenges that we face, all those places where it seems like that progress is going backward, right? I think that we need to remember something. In the face of global climate crisis, religious nationalism, attacks on voting rights, and the war on women's bodies, I think that there is something very important that we must never forget. There is one reason and one reason only that I am able to sign a legal marriage license for 2 women here in Louisville. There is one reason why there is an LGBTQ supportive student group at Bellarmine University. There is one reason why KFC and UPS and Caesars Casino are major sponsors of every year's Kentuckiana Pride Festival. And that one reason is really, really simple. It is because lesbian, gay, bi, and trans people and our friends and our families came out of the closet. It is because people refused to hide anymore and stepped out to publicly demand that they be treated with respect and fairness. Back at that March on Washington in 1987, there was one message that I kept running across. I kept seeing it plastered on banners, on t-shirts, and on buttons. And that message was, silence equals death. Now, we all know that gay people like to be a little dramatic. At least this gay person does. But back then, in the face of AIDS and religious and government-sanctioned hatred, we had come to the realization that there was no other choice. Silence truly did equal death. So we had to come out. There was no choice. Now, for us today, here in this congregation, in this place, I think that many of us live in our own kinds of closets. Some are closets of mental health. Some are financial closets or political closets. Many are spiritual closets. Here in Louisville, we live amongst many neighbors who assume that traditional Christianity is the norm and perhaps the only acceptable form of religion. Many others are aware of Judaism and Islam and maybe a few other types of faith, but see them as the exception to the norm. And an increasing number of people are choosing to not participate in any of those given approaches to religion, thinking that they are the only options. And here we are, a small but radically diverse and open-minded faith community that largely keeps to itself, at least as far as telling others about Unitarian Universalism is concerned. I think that many of us live in our own little liberal bubble of religion. I know I kind of do. coming here to enjoy connecting with others, learning new things, and hearing occasionally inspiring messages, but not feeling compelled to share the good news of respect and compassion that we believe in and that we try to affirm in our own lives. Whether we like to admit it or not, when we choose not to share our beliefs and our values and our approach to religion with others, we are often doing so, well, because we simply want to avoid discomfort. We are unsure how what we might say will be received, or we think that we already know how it's going to be accepted or not accepted. Or perhaps we're unsure what we would say anyway, not feeling empowered to describe all peoples in a clear and intelligible way to those who have never been here. So we keep our mouths shut. For some of us, our silence about our religion is motivated by fear. Fear of being ostracized or marginalized in our workplace or even within our own family. It would be a huge risk to let people know what kind of church we go to on Sundays. So we tell ourselves that religion is a private matter anyway. I mean, we don't like other people proselytizing to us, so we're not going to do it to them. And of course, we all know that trying to reason with fundamentalist religious folks is a no-win situation anyway, so why bother? Coming to church as a refuge, but choosing not to talk about it with the people in other parts of our lives, is being in the closet. And while it may help us avoid awkward interactions, it comes with its own set of consequences. For one thing, it perpetuates the status quo. It allows too many of our neighbors and our friends to continue to assume that everybody around them thinks and believes the same thing, and that the comfort of conformity is better than the reality of rainbows. Now, I am not here today suggesting that you go out there and tell people that you think our kind of church is better than their kind of church. That is not the Unitarian Universalist way to be in the world. That's not what we do. What I am saying is that I think we have an obligation to share our beliefs, to share our affirmation that religious diversity is a blessing and not something to be feared. We have a responsibility to stop allowing other people to be the only voice for all religion, especially when they are using that voice to defend discrimination and perpetuate judgment and closed-mindedness. When it comes to some of the issues that are dividing our society the most right now, from women's freedom to make reproductive choices, to transgender kids like my niece participating in sports, to violence and abuse of Muslim immigrants, most people out there will tell you that religion, or at least religion as they have experienced it, is on the wrong side of the debate. And others, of course, will tell you that their religion is the reason that they oppose laws and policies that would protect people and promote progress. What we have to offer here is a religious voice and an approach to being a spiritual community that is a viable and essential alternative to all of that. You know, there are literally thousands, or at least hundreds of people living within just a few miles of this building who would probably love to be here with us right now, freely exploring their faith and their lives, if they only knew a church like ours was here. There are definitely thousands of people living within just a few miles of this building whose worldview, whose ability to cope with change and diversity would be expanded just a little bit more if they knew that Unitarian Universalism existed and they had actually met a living, breathing UU. If I learned anything from growing up as a gay man in West Virginia and being bullied and picked on for much of my young life, if going to the March on Washington and working in the LGBTQ community for 2 decades has shown me anything, if witnessing the astounding change that has swept over our country around attitudes of gender and sexual orientation, if that has taught me anything, it is this: nothing will get better. Nothing will ever be better for us or for anybody else until we come out and speak up and share the truth of our lives. We do not have the luxury of saying that religion is a private matter, because some people are using religion to hurt people. We cannot keep our vision of a world defined by justice and compassion a secret any longer. Too many people are suffering. So many people need hope. The great leader of Indian liberation, Mohandas Gandhi, is often quoted as having said, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." Well, the world that I want to see is a place that looks a lot different than this one we see right now. It is a place where there is a lot less us versus them and a lot more we. It's a place where that we is people of different cultures and religions and beliefs and ways of being, all valued, all appreciated for the blessings that they are. That world cannot come to be unless we be it. Not just in our minds and not even just in our hearts, but be it out in the open, out of the closet, out of this building, out there for everyone to see. The motto of National Coming Out Day is take your next step. In coming out of the spiritual closet, maybe your next step is to invite a friend or a neighbor to come with you to church, or to come to one of our concerts or our discussion groups. Or maybe not. Maybe it's going to a class or reading a book and spending some time becoming better able to articulate what it is that you believe as a Unitarian Universalist and why you believe it. Maybe it's showing up and participating in our Get Out the Vote campaign actions, or taking a whole stack of postcards this afternoon. Maybe it's just having a personal one-on-one conversation with someone in your family about racial justice. Now, I know that all of this sounds pretty preachy. I get it. And maybe it is. I know that this congregation is supposed to be that warm and fuzzy place where we just celebrate all the things that bring us together. I know that we're not supposed to be the church that demands that you do anything. While all of that is true and good, I also think that we are religious people who believe passionately in the values of respect and justice. And if we truly believe these things, we have to do more than just affirm them intellectually and personally. We have a greater responsibility to get out there and share them. Back when I was in college, some of my queer friends used to like to say, closets are only good for clothes, not people. I think what I'm saying to you today is that spiritual closets are good for nothing. And being the change that we want to see in the world means that we have to come out of them. Let's take that next step together and do a little something, big or small, quietly, or maybe with a mighty roar, to share our good news, to share our religious values and beliefs with the world. Nobody's going to do it for us. We are the ones who have to come out. And the world desperately needs us to. Amen. And so may it be.